A soldier investigates a tunnel at the start of the film. The tunnel could only accommodate one adult at a time, and even then they had to crawl. The soldier who had entered the tunnel had a phone and informed someone of its existence. Unbeknownst to him, a larger room existed beneath the tunnel he entered. A Vietnamese man stood there pointing a sharp bamboo stick upwards. Following that, the Vietnamese stabbed the American soldier with his bamboo spear. Some time after the incident, a helicopter arrived in a Vietnamese forest. A Vietnamese woman named Vo Mai appeared to be stalking the helicopter from behind a hill in the distance. The helicopter then touched down, and the Americans on board disembarked. The American soldiers then boarded a car and drove deep into the forest. Before the helicopter took off, 2 soldiers picked up packages that resembled fallen soldiers. 3 cars were carrying the new soldiers and were heading straight for the American Army base in the woods. When they arrived, they were met by a corporal named Green who showed them to their resting place and introduced them to one of the soldiers there named Garrity. Soon after, a lieutenant named Hollowborn arrived and informed them that the first tunnel would be open the following day. Some of the soldiers who heard this were taken aback because they had only recently arrived but had been trapped in a dangerous hole. Hollowborn then directed a soldier named Heaney to execute the Vietnamese soldier they had apprehended. They referred to the Vietnamese soldier as a VC. Heaney refused the order, but Hollowborn insisted, forcing him to comply. Soon after, Heaney was carrying the VC that they had cornered in a tree. Heaney was noticed by the other soldiers as they approached. Heaney began telling them that VC was a Vietnamese sniper who had killed 5 American soldiers. Heaney then dropped him, and he died with a broken neck. Heaney was pensive after the soldiers dispersed and then cried. Another soldier, Harris, called it murder, but Hollowborn was furious, and Harris did not prolong the problem. The soldiers then ate together. Those who had recently arrived began to mingle. Porterson, Johnson, Verano, Lidford, Graybridge, and Miller were among the newcomers. After eating, the soldiers began to pursue their own interests, such as Verano playing cards with Lidford and Harris reading the Bible. Lidford asked Verano to smoke, and Johnson said it was a dangerous thing to do. If they smoked before entering the tunnel, the VC could easily smell and detect them, which would be fatal. They then went back to their respective beds and fell asleep. They were already preparing to enter the tunnel the next day. They began discussing the tunnel, which they claimed was very long and had no clear beginning or end point. Soon after, Heaney arrived and began to discuss their respective responsibilities. They then proceeded through the forest to the tunnel. While they were walking, 2 VC followed them and seemed to be plotting something. Hollowborn opened the lid of the hole shortly after they arrived at one of the tunnel entrances, and the hole was very small. Hollowborn requested a volunteer as well, and Garrity offered to be the first to enter the tunnel. Garrity began to enter the tunnel and crawled forward. Because it was so dark in there, he held a flashlight in his hand. Soon after, gunshots rang out, shocking the soldiers above. Johnson went down immediately to pick up Garrity and bring him up, but Garrity did not survive. Hollowborn then requested a grenade and instructed Johnson, who was still in the tunnel, to throw it inside. Johnson followed orders and managed to escape just before the grenade exploded. Johnson claimed to have seen 2 VC inside. Hollowborn then returned to base, bringing Garrity with him. He also brought several other soldiers with him. Following that, the remaining soldiers stood guard with their weapons, while Johnson and Porterson entered the hole wearing masks. They were then able to locate and extract the 2 deceased VCs. Porterson then requested a knife and a flashlight because they were returning down. He also brought a radio. And Harris, who was waiting above, twisted the cable to lengthen it. They discovered a trap after crawling for a while, and Johnson immediately cut the rope and deactivated the explosives. After that, they both continued forward, and Johnson stated that it was simply a dead end because the tunnel ahead of them had come to an end, and above it was a way out. Unbeknownst to them, a large dungeon far below them housed many VCs holding meetings. Johnson began to rise to the surface after that, but when his head emerged, Vo Mai, who was already sneaking around and holding a sharp bamboo stick, stabbed Johnson in the neck to death. Porterson became alarmed after Johnson was attacked. Porterson was buried after Vo Mai threw a grenade into the hole. Following that, Vo Mai fled and entered another tunnel hole. Soldiers waiting for them began to notice something was wrong, so Harris pulled back the radio cable, which was loose. Following that, Heaney instructed Harris and Lidford to remain in the area in case Porterson and Johnson returned. While Heaney, Green, and Verano investigated, they began to divide into 2 groups. They found Johnson dead after walking for a while, and Heaney also said they had to return. Verano was concerned about Porterson, but he was forced to return. Meanwhile, Porterson, who was buried in the tunnel, resurfaced and began crawling. Vomai appears to have a large space in another tunnel where she lives with her children and other colleagues. Vomai was also seen burying her deceased colleagues inside the tunnel. Heaney, Green, and Verano returned and informed them of Johnson's death and Porterson's disappearance. Heaney then told Harris to turn on the radio and contact Hollowborn, and he asked Lidford to protect him. Meanwhile, Heaney, Verano, and Green will enter the hole. When crawling through the tunnel, Heaney was in the lead. He became confused after a while on all fours when the tunnel splits into 2 lanes. Green suggests splitting up, but Heaney tells them to stay together. They kept moving forward until Heaney fell into a sharp trap and died. Verano in the middle was shocked and sobbed. Green asked him to leave the hole, but Verano was still crying. Suddenly, several shots were fired from the front of Verano, striking him. Green quickly fled, while the VC who shot Verano hid once more. Meanwhile, Lidford and Harris waited near the hole for them. Soon after, Harris heard a voice, which turned out to be a VC targeting them. They were fired on repeatedly until Lidford was shot. Harris rushed into the hole and drew Lidford inside. The 2 VC who had shot at them then went into the tunnel as well. There were still many soldiers on standby and off duty at the headquarters, including Miller and Graybridge. They were walking and chatting when suddenly a swarm of VC began shooting at them. They began to retaliate, resulting in a shootout. Many soldiers were killed by gunshots, as were the Hollowborn who fought them. Green, who was still exploring the tunnel, saw someone in front of him and fired once, but it turned out that person was Harris. Fortunately, the bullet did not strike him. Harris informed that Lidford was hit by a gunshot and his injuries were so severe that they had to leave immediately. Harris also inquired about the location of the Green team, but Green remained silent and looked at Harris because his team was dead. They crawled again after that. Green discovered another tunnel 1 level lower. They all come down, including Lidford, who was hurt. Unbeknownst to them, Vomai was approaching from behind. Vomai also stabbed and killed Lidford with a knife. Harris and Green continued their journey, but Green abruptly stopped and smoked. Harris questioned his behavior, and Green stated that he was tired and would stay there. Harris also departed. Meanwhile, Porterson is still exploring the tunnel. The war with the VC was still ongoing at headquarters. Miller and Graybridge remained alive and fighting them. Meanwhile, the shot Hollowborn was still alive. He dialed 911 and requested air support. Returning to Graybridge and Miller, they were being pursued by VC and fled to the river area, where Graybridge was shot and killed. Miller kept running until he was caught by a VC. They then fought, and Miller killed him. Meanwhile, the VC's assault on the base became more ferocious. Many American soldiers had been killed. Back to Green, he was still smoking in the tunnel as before. Shortly after, 2 VC men emerged from a hole, and Green killed the lead one. At that time a VC appeared from nowhere, and Green engaged him in a fight in a narrow tunnel, killing him. Green then mutilated the VC's body so he could pass. Back at base, Hollowborn was still able to stand up and kill VC, but he had reached his limit. He then opens a box full of grenades and detonates them all at once. Meanwhile, Porterson, who was still exploring, discovered a water-filled tunnel. He swam into the watery tunnel after opening his uniform. He almost passed out but managed to get out in time. However, he appeared in a room where the VC was resting. There was a VC who shot him right away, and Porterson threw a grenade and returned to the hole, but was shot in the chest. After the grenade exploded, Porterson returned upstairs, where he discovered 3 VC who had been hit by a grenade. One of those who shot Porterson was still alive. Porterson was about to shoot him when he asked not to be shot. Porterson lowered his gun and felt sorry for his condition. There were 2 holes, one of which Peterson was about to fall into. The VC who was still alive abruptly stopped him and directed him to another hole. Following that, the VC died. Returning to Green, he continued to explore and discovered a wooden barrier. Green attempted to break through the log, unaware that a VC had blocked his path back with a wooden fence. Water gushed out as soon as Green broke the barrier, and Green was unable to return because he had been trapped by VC. Green perished in the tunnel. Meanwhile, Porterson found a way out, returned to the base, and met with Miller. They were both taken aback because the headquarters had been destroyed and his colleagues had been killed. Meanwhile, Harris found a room in the tunnel, along with Vo Mai and 2 children. Harris requested permission to pass and promised not to harm Vo Mai or her children, but Vo Mai became enraged and threatened Harris. Soon after, a plane arrived and dropped several bombs. The bomb detonated, destroying the existing tunnels. The children of Vo Mai were able to escape into the tunnel, but Vo Mai and Harris were trapped in the room. Following that, Harris assisted Vo Mai, who had been struck by the ground. Because the tunnel hole that was the only way out was closed, the two of them began digging. They died soon after because they ran out of oxygen.